Okay, so yesterday we talked about two topics, that was execution context, and execution context can be of two parts, that is global and another is function. We also talked about another topic that was phases of execution, and phases consist of two. The first one is called declaration phase and second one is called execution phase. If you think about a declaration phase, what are the topics we talked about in declaration phase? Like there are only two kind of things JavaScript engine looks for in declaration phase, and that is variable declaration and function declaration. In execution phase, everything else happens, but let's just try to have an example and see what we are doing here is we have a variable, and what we can see from here is this variable declaration that we are doing using var a equal to 45. Here, there are two execution is happening. We can break it down into something as var a, and we can say a equal to 45. So a is your declaration and a is equal to 45 is your execution. So these are the things that we learned about yesterday. And the question that Kusal asked today was a topic called hoisting. So this is one of the topics that we are going to talk about today. So this is the first topic that we will be talking about. First is variable, variable and function hoisting. And second topic we will be talking about is we'll get a bit into higher order function and see how higher order function behaves in terms of execution context and stuff like that. The third thing, and that we'll see whether we go to that point or not, and that is where we'll talk about all the other concepts, like we'll talk about closure. But let's see if we get there or not. But these are the two topics that we'll be talking about today. And this is the two important topic we'll be talking about. So let's start with a simple example first, and I'll just write the example right here so it will be easier for us to do that, and then we can just start moving on to first thing we need is an example, and after example I can just go ahead and start explaining by making diagrams for it. Along with hoisting, we'll also learn about difference between var, let, and const when it comes to hoisting. And this is going to be your last example. This is going to be your last thing about like the difference between, because if you remember, we have talked about var, let, and const multiple times with multiple informations. Like you remember the first time we talked about it was about like how defining it with var, you can initialize it or something like that. So we talked about the difference between var, let, const at multiple phases. One was about how you declare it. So what is the difference between the boxes created by var, let, and const? Later on, we talked about what is the difference in terms of how you, like how the scoping works for var, let, and const, because that is also different. Now the last topic about var, let, and const difference is about hoisting. How hoisting works, what is hoisting, and that is something that we'll cover today. So I have a variable named var num that has a value of 45, and let's have something like let. Okay, first let's talk about var only. Okay, so this is our example. Okay, this is the code that we are going to understand in terms of how execution context and everything works. Okay, so what we will do is what is the first thing that happens whenever you're going to execute any piece of code? You can keep your mic on, like some of you, so we can just have a bit of conversation there and we can just make it work in that way. So what is the first thing that happens whenever you are trying to execute, like whenever you're trying to execute any piece of code like one we have here? What is the first thing that happens?
It goes up on the declaration phase.
So let's start with the first step, and that is not declaration phase. The first step is it creates a global execution context. Okay, so that is the first step. And also keep writing the steps here. So I'll say first step is creation of global execution context. That is the first thing that happens, right? Next thing that happens is once the creation of global execution context is done, second thing is when it goes, the global execution context goes into declaration phase. That is the second thing. Third thing happens is after the completion of declaration phase, we go into which phase?
Execution.
So these are the steps that we have to follow. Okay, perfectly fine. I've written it down so it will be easier for you to understand. First thing is creation of global execution context. Second thing is global execution context goes into declaration phase. And third is after the completion of declaration phase, we go into execution phase. Perfect. Now, repeat. So now you can just go ahead and start telling me what to do. Okay, what we should be doing now. So Kushal, now can you just, after understanding this, can you just repeat it? What will happen when you see the whole code?
First, it goes to global execution context. It create a box for global execution context.
So first thing is, as soon as computer sees your code, it creates a global execution context. And global execution context is going to look like what? A rectangle, right?
Yes, sir.
So this is your global execution context. Now what I need a line that can just separate the message, the memory, and where execution happens. So I'll just go ahead and create a line here, and that is memory line. Similarly, I can just write a heading so we know like, okay, what part is this? So this is going to be your message, memory, and this is going to be where execution happens on the left hand side. This part is known as global execution context. And I'm writing GEC so we understand, that's all. All good? So this is the first thing that happened. So we'll go ahead and tick mark it. Line number 1 is done. We'll move on to the second one. So Abhijit, what will happen next?
Bhaiya, now the var num equal to 45, it will store in the memory in a box named num, and will store 45, and this will be happen for each and every var globally, mentioned globally.
Okay, so can you repeat the line number 2?
Uh, line number 2 in the sense, Bhaiya?
Line number 2 of like here, like line number, sorry, first line, first step is step 2.
Okay, okay. GC goes into declaration phase.
What is GAC?
Global execution
Context.
context, yes.
Everybody has a clear understanding of what the word context means, right? we'll get a better understanding when we go into it. So exactly, Abhijit, what happens is the second step is global execution context goes into declaration phase. So that is the second thing that will happen. It will not go into code right now. Okay. So I'll go ahead and say, okay, right now, which phase I am in? So I'm in declaration phase. So declaration phase is over and I'm like into that part, and it will do all the job of say declaration phase. So whatever is happening between step 2 and step 3, we are going to perform it now. Okay. So Puspendra, what will happen after this? Once global execution context is in declaration phase, what are the things declaration phase looks for?
Uh, so let's create a box in memory with a variable num.
Okay, so but before that, what are the things execution context looks for in declaration phase? Let's go back, don't worry.
Yes, sir.
Here in declaration phase, what are the thing it looks for? Can you see it here?
So variable.
So what are
Total
those
number of
two things we are looking for?
and declared.
Variable declaration and function declaration,
Yes, sir.
right?
Yes,
Okay,
Priya.
Puspendra?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so in declaration phase, I can only look for variable declaration and function declaration.
Function declaration.
So I'm just going to name a line number here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now tell me on which line, okay? So start moving from line number 1 and tell me if it is it will be executed in declaration phase or not. So start from line number 1 and tell me yes or no. Keep going.
Yes, sir.
And
So line number 2, yes.
okay,
So line number 3, yes.
yeah.
So 4, no.
4 and 5, we'll just skip it, right?
Yes, sir.
So we'll go ahead and say cross. I don't care about it right now. I just care about declaration.
Okay, sir.
Line number
So
6,
yes, sir.
7,
Yes, sir.
all
And
good?
yes, sir.
Yeah, so obviously we have missed a bit of step here and there. Like, so for example, step 1 was creation of global execution context. Step 2 is about global execution context goes into declaration phase. Step 3 should be declaration phase looks for function and variable declaration and create respective boxes for that. Okay, that will be your third step, right? So you can just move in here, like I can just say third step is going to be working doing the work of declaration phase. That is looking for function. Okay, let's not add it and make it like even more chaotic, but you can understand we need to do that, right? Okay, so let's move on to declaration phase. So what will happen on line number 1, Alicia?
Bhaiya, a variable is stored.
Yeah, so on line number 1, so what I'll do it for the first time, and then later on you can just repeat very similarly. So here you can see on line number 1, we are saying var num is equal to 45. So what we are trying to convey to global execution context in this way, like what we're trying to convey to this is, I have a variable declaration called num. Do you know anything about it? That's what I want to tell them, because I don't know whether it exists or not. So the first thing it will do is, in declaration phase, you care about the first part, that is declaration. In second part, you care about just execution. But right now, which phase I am in? I'm in declaration phase. So I'll just look for declaration. So I'm saying var num. So var is a keyword that creates a box. So here we will create a small box like this. Okay. We will create a box like this, and the name of the box is going to be, okay, let's use a different color. It will be better for you guys. Okay, so we have a box and the name of the box is num. So this is all that will happen on line number one. So on line number one, in the declaration phase, it will create a box called num. And whenever you are defining the variable using var, there is another thing that happens. So whenever you're defining any variable with var keyword, there are two things that happens, and I'm going to write it down so you understand it better. So I'm saying var num. So what we normally think is like var is a keyword that is held, that does one thing, and that is what? Creation of the box. So var creates a box like this. So this is what is happening here. The box gets created because of var keyword. So I'm just going to point it like this. So because of var keyword, I have created a box. This is name of the box. So I'll go ahead and say name, that is num. So this is called, the first step you can think about is box creation. There is also a second step that we never thought about it. And that second step is known as initialization. So var doesn't only create a box, it also initializes that box. And how, what do you mean? What do I mean when I say initializes that box? Initialization means, so there is a rule in JavaScript, and that rule is you cannot use a box until it is initialized. Initialized means put the initial value. So, but here I'm just saying var num. What it will be initialized with? What value it will be initialized with?
So undefined.
Exactly. So var creates a box, that is step number one. And so box creation is done. What is the second step?
Initialization.
Second step is initialization, and the box get initialized with what value? Elton?
Uh, the no 45.
Okay, again, let's repeat it, okay? Elton,
Uh,
focus.
yeah. No, actually, it's first in a declaration phase. It looks for all the
Exactly.
variables.
Awesome.
After that, it goes
So we need
to
to understand that we are in declaration phase right now. In declaration phase, the only thing I look for is num, var num. That's all I look for. There is nothing else I am looking for. So here I'm saying var num. We used to think var only creates a box. But actually var does two things. The first thing it does is creation of the box, and second thing it does is initializing that box with some value, and that value is undefined. Why do we use undefined? Is because undefined is a void value. Say for example, in a real life, you see a box. That box is empty. How do you explain that to your friends or anyone? How do you explain that to others? So the way you explain that is by saying, oh, this box is empty. That's all you say, right? But how can you explain that to the system? So that is the problem there. And that's why we can see that here we use undefined to initialize that value. So undefined is a void value. So what does two things, that is box creation and initialization, and it initializes the value with undefined. And the rule says, let's go ahead and write the rule also. And that I'll just star mark it down here by saying you can't use a variable without what? Without what?
Initialization.
You cannot use that. That is a rule, okay? So everybody understood. Elton, can you just walk me through about like what is happening here whenever we are in declaration phase and we are saying var num? Walk me through everything.
we are in when declaration phase. It only looks for a box, the variable to be declared or the function.
Okay.
So when it's put in the memory, it just leaves it as undefined. for the time being until we add a value, the which happens in the execution phase.
Okay. So in declaration phase, var does two things. What are those two things?
Hmm.
I have written it down so you can look at the screen and you can just read it.
One is, yeah, it creates a box and then it initializes, but
Initializes with what value?
undefined.
And what is the rule?
Rule is you can't use a variable without initializing.
Perfect. Everybody understood this part?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Now let's try to understand and go back to it again. So I'm on line number 1. And here we are saying var num is equal to 45. So I have created a box. What is the step 2 that happens in declaration phase? Sonu, what is the second thing that happens in declaration phase? I have already created the box here. You can see the box creation is done. What is the second thing that happens in using var keyword? What is the second thing that happens?
Initialization happens.
Initialization with which value?
Initialization with undefined value.
And what is the rule of initialization?
We can't use a variable without initialization.
Perfect. So here, what value it will be initialized with?
Undefined.
So I'll say undefined. I'm just using the shortcut UN, or else let's use some other colors so we can understand it is undefined. Okay, so I'm just going to say undefined. Awesome. Done. So line number 1 is done. So now Sada will walk me through about like what will happen in line number 2, and just walk slowly. Okay, don't worry, you don't have to run. Just walk slowly in terms of and everything is on the screen. You don't have to think too much. Everything is in the screen. You just have to look at right point to understand what you have to say. Okay, so walk me through what will happen on line number 2.
Yeah, so a new box is created with the name of num2.
Okay, so I'm
Yeah.
just going to create the box. Just give me a second. So box creation is done.
Yeah,
And name of this box is num2.
num2.
All good? Anything else?
Initialize the value with undefined.
Initialize the
Is
value with undefined. Why it is doing that?
because we have to initialize the value.
Who initializes the value?
Who initialize the value?
Yeah, but there must be somebody who must be initializing this, right?
Yes, so system actually. JavaScript engine initialize the value.
Who initializes the value?
Yeah, variable actually. I'm sorry. Var.
Yeah, whoever
Var.
creates the box initializes it.
Yeah,
Okay, so who is creating the box?
var keyword.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
here on line number 2, this is what will happen. Okay, so Tinkle, can you walk me through what will happen on line number 3?
It will create a box.
It will create a box. And is this a special kind of box or something?
No, yeah, it's function declaration.
It's a function declaration. Obviously, in memory representation, everything is binary. So I don't know whether it is going to be in that way or not. But let's think like it is a special kind of box. Okay.
Okay.
So it creates a box. Box creation
Yeah.
is done. What is the name of the box?
Name is the add.
Add. And what is inside the box?
Undefined.
Okay, so let's do one more thing. And here we don't have space left. So I'm just going to keep this here and think about the next part. Okay. Next part, what we are doing. So we have something like function, right? Like this function add. And it is something like taking some parameter and then we are doing something, and this is known as body of the function, right? All good? Now think about this, what is happening here. What function keyword does? So one thing that it does is, like we have already talked about it. What is the first thing we have seen? Like, okay, box creation happens. So box creation is done, okay? What is the second thing it should be doing? Think about it like that. Like, oh, so here I'm just going to color it so you understand. So function creates a box. And the second thing it does is not initialization. See, the box creation, so think about, like when we use var, it also creates a box. When you use function, it also creates a box. The difference between both of these box creation is, here we have seen that function is going to first create a box like this, and this is the box. And what is the name of the box? Then it is going to be, okay, on the left hand side, whatever it is, I'm just going to name it add. So the name of that is add. But function doesn't initializes the box. What it does, whatever is the body of the function, or you can think about the definition of the function, that goes inside. So it is like the whole definition that we can see it here. This whole definition, like in declaration phase with variable, what happens? We are just saying var num, that's all. We are not going to num is equal to 45, but with function, it doesn't exactly behave in that way. What happens is, whenever you use the keyword function to do something, it will create a box, and inside that it will keep the whole body of the function. What is the body of the function? You can think of it to be like this, the whole thing that is there. So here the whole thing is function add a comma b, and inside you have return a plus b. Can you see what happens?
Yes, sir.
So this is also initialization. Just give me a second. Okay, so here in previous person, like we have seen initialization with what? Undefined. Here initialization with function definition, or you can call it function body. So can you see the difference? Whenever you create the box using var, you can see that the creation happens, the box is created, and it is initialized with undefined. Whenever you're using function, the box gets created, and inside initialization, what is it? The whole definition of the function is there. And this is the difference between var and function.
Okay.
Okay, understood everyone?
Yes, yeah.
If anybody is having any problem, go ahead. Anyone? No, okay. Okay, so can you just tell me what will happen with add function here? Now, Tinkle, can you complete the process? We left it in middle. What will happen inside add function? What will be the
Yeah,
value inside add function?
it will store the value, store the full body of the function.
So I'm just going to name it fn. It conveys that it is a function. The whole body of the function. It's not undefined, but it is whole body of the function. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So line number 3, 4, and 5 done.
Yeah.
Let's move on to line number 6. Okay. And who will explain line number 6? Vishakha?
Yes, Bhaiya.
Go ahead and explain it.
Uh, First, it will check if the num3 function variable is defined or not. If it is not, then it will initialize with a box with the name num3.
Awesome. It will
Uh,
create a box,
and
right? It will
sorry,
create a box. So let's go ahead and create a box first, and then we'll move to the second step. So first step is creation of the box.
create a box and with the name num3,
And with the name num3, I'm just going to name it num3.
and then it will initialize the box with undefined.
Undefined. Why undefined? Who is doing this?
Var,
Awesome.
var,
Yeah.
and because you cannot use a variable without initialization, so that's why
Awesome.
undefined.
So we are going to create another box for num4, and that is going to be num4 is going to be okay. So just let make it smaller so we know what is going. So this is num4 and this is sum. Num4 is again going to be undefined and
Defined.
sum is going to be
Or the function definition.
no. Look at this sum. Sum. What is sum?
Sorry, sum is a variable, so sum with sum.
Yes, the first thing that will happen is like in declaration phase, it will be initialized with undefined no matter what.
Yes.
In execution, I'll see. But right now in declaration is over. And what is the state for us in declaration? In declaration, you can see the state that we have is num is undefined, num2 is undefined, num3 is undefined, num4 is undefined, sum is undefined, and add is a function. So this is the state we have, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So now as soon as this, I've reached line number 8, what happened? Sonu?
Yes, after reaching line number 8, third step happens, sir. After going to after ending the declaration phase, it entered to the execution phase.
It will enter the new phase, that is execution phase. Okay, so in execution phase, let's see what happens now. So we'll start with line number 1. Okay, so what is the part that is going to get executed in execution phase, Sonu?
That num is equal to 45. This is going to be
Num
get
is equal to
executed.
45. So what are we trying to do here? Num is
We
equal
are
to 45.
storing the value of num 45.
So we are storing the value 45 into the variable called num. So I'll just go ahead and overwrite undefined with which value?
45.
So now the value is 45. Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. Sada, go ahead and what will happen on line number 2 in execution phase?
It assign the number 2 value to 90.
So num2 will be reassigned
Yeah,
to
reassigned to
90.
90.
Okay. What will happen to line number 3? Bharat, can you talk? Okay, no problem. Sadaf, go ahead, and what will happen on line number 3 in execution phase?
Yeah, so
Okay, so let's look at this again. Okay, this is the last piece that we need to understand. Whenever there is anything that has nothing to do with execution, this is execution or this is declaration?
Execution.
Again, think about it. What I've selected this red line. What is it? It is declaration or
function
execution?
declaration.
It's a
Function
declaration,
declaration.
right? It's not
Yes.
execution. So this
Yes.
is declaration, and which phase I am in right now?
Execution phase.
Execution. So what it will do? It will just skip it. Because
Okay.
in execution, I don't care about declaration. Did I care about this part here in execution phase?
No.
No, I only care about this part. In function declaration, there is nothing to care about because in declaration phase only it cared about everything. Okay. So what will happen to line number 3, Sadaf? Now tell me.
It will skip this.
It will skip line number which? Which line number?
3.
4,
4, 5.
5. Perfect. So now which line we are on now?
Now on line number 6.
So we are on line number 6.
Yeah.
So Puspendra, go ahead and tell me what will happen on line number 6 and 7.
Sir, it reassign the value of 100 to num3.
Exactly. Good choice of word, reassigned. What will happen line number 7?
Sir, reassign the value of num4 to 120.
120. Now, Elton, can you go ahead and walk me through what is going to happen on line number 8? Don't we take one step at a time? And first is in execution phase, which part will we take care of?
The sum equal to add num and
Because
num4.
this is what execution phase is all about, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I am saying sum is equal to something. And that something is what? A function declaration or function call?
Function call.
It's a function call.
Yeah.
Again, let's go back to the same thing. So look at what happens in when execution context gets created. What are the 2 times execution context gets created?
First time global, after that function.
Whenever function execution happens, it creates a global, it creates a function execution context. Okay.
Yeah.
So there is a function call right here, and because there is a function call, it will create what? It will create a function execution context. So let's go ahead and create our function execution context. And function execution context is going to look very, very similar to what we have done for global execution context. So this part is done. Now it will have a part of memory. I'm just going to section it like this so we can name our memory. Okay. Now, so this is what happened because of which line of code? Add. Because there is a function call, I'm going to create a function execution context. Which phase this function execution context will be in?
Now it will be in declaration phase.
So I'm saying add execution context. I am in declaration phase. So what will happen, Alicia, now? In declaration phase, what do I look for?
Here we will execute the add function.
Yeah, we will execute the add function, but what are the things we will look for?
We look for the num and num4.
So in declaration phase, we look for 2 things, and those 2 things are just declaration, function and variable declaration. You remember, like there are 2 phases. In declaration phase, what do we look for?
Variable declaration and function declaration.
Variable declaration and function declaration. That is the first step. So let's not run. Okay, let's just take a bit of time to understand it. So inside this function, Alisa, can you see any declaration? What is declaration?
Yes,
What are the declaration we are looking for? Function or
we are
variable declaration?
function declaration.
Okay, so let's repeat it. Okay, I am calling a function. The function is in declaration mode, and in declaration mode, there are only 2 things we look for: a variable declaration and function declaration. So inside this function, can you see anything like a variable declaration or function declaration?
No, bhaiya.
No, right? Anybody who can see any variable declaration or function
Yes, sir.
declaration?
A comma B.
So even if it looks like parameter here, these are also very, very similar to variable declaration. You can think of this to be a variable declaration. Okay.
Yes.
So now you got it,
Okay.
Alisa. So walk me through what will happen in declaration phase with A and B. So you can think of it to be something like var A and var B. So what will happen? Just similar to what happened earlier, just repeat that.
Yeah, box creation will take place over here, like var A and var
Okay,
B.
go ahead, Avijit, and follow me through. What will happen?
Yeah, it will create a box named A and B.
It will create a box named A, and it will create another box
Another
named
box with
B,
B, and it will
and the value
store
will be,
undefined. Undefined.
it will restore undefined.
Yes, we are.
Okay, Alisa, now you understood what will happen here?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Now what will happen after, like we have, is there any other declaration here?
No way.
No,
If there is no declaration, what will we do?
It will go to
Go to
execution phase.
execution.
It
Yes.
will go to execution phase. So I'm just going to cross it. I'm just going to execution phase. So in execution phase, what are the part we will look for? So see, like if you're getting confused, what it looks like is this: var a is equal to whatever value you're sending. Okay, so it's something like that. You can think of it to be something like this: var a is equal to what value we are sending from here? Num. What is the value of num?
45.
Value of num
45,
45.
and you can think of it to be var b is equal to num4, and num4 is 120.
120.
So even if it doesn't look like this, you can think of it to be looking like this. Now you understand Alicia properly?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so this is what it looks like. You can think of A and B to be something like this. And similar to what we did it here, we did it here. That's all, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so now Visakha, just walk me through what will happen next. So we have created two boxes, A and B, and the value of that is undefined. We were in declaration mode. Now we are in execution mode. In execution mode, what will happen?
So A will be reassigned as 45.
Perfect.
And B will be reassigned as num4, that is 120.
Awesome. Perfect. Now is the last part. And after this, we will be happy forever. So next part is, Kusal, walk me through what will happen to the next line in execution phase. Kusal, you need to unmute yourself, I think, if you're...
There, actually, he had an emergency.
What?
Kushal had an emergency and he went to the court.
Okay, okay. So Gangadhar, can you talk? Okay, no problem. Anybody else like who wants to walk me through what is going to happen now?
sir,
Yes, I think so.
please.
That function body will get executed. It will return a plus b.
Yes, return a plus b, and that will happen in memory part or execution part.
Execution part, not in memory part.
Execution.
So I'm
Execution part.
saying a plus b. So I'm looking for the value of a. Where will it go?
First, it will look inside, that is inside its memory. So it will find a. So there is value stored inside it, that is 45.
So
It will
you're saying it
toggle
will
out.
go here, right?
What we have?
So you're saying it will go inside.
Like it's inside its own function, it will look for it. So it will find the value a, that is 45.
Okay. Okay, guys, just give me a second. Like I think the battery died. Okay, sorry, it is back. Okay, so it will go into the memory of that execution context, and that memory is right here, right? So we will go into here. What value we will find?
45.
So we will find a value 45. So A will be 45 and B will be, it will go again to this part and it will find the value
120.
120. We will add it. What will get returned from here?
165.
So 165.
165 got returned from here. So this is the value. Now what will happen with 165?
It will be reassigned in some variable with value of 165.
Look at this, what is happening. You don't have to walk around here and there. Like, look at this. So this function is returning a value. Where will it go?
Sum.
Into the variable named sum. So now what I can do is I can just go ahead and reassign the value of sum from undefined to
165.
165. And as soon as that happens, what is the next thing that will happen?
So it will get deleted whole function execution part. Add
So
execution context.
function execution context, everything that we were talking about till now will get deleted. So I'm just going to do a curly like this so you understand this is deleted. And now in our memory, what is the state you can see? What is the value of num? What is the value of num2? What is the value of add? What is the value of num3? What is the value of num4? And what is the value of sum?
Undefined.
All good. Like, so now the value of num is 45, num2 is 30, and this is the state of application. So this is how it actually works. How many of you have like 100% clarity? Like you understood what is going on?
Yes.
I have
Okay. So let's just try to change our requirement and see what happens with that box. Okay. So now we are going to look at the real world code where we can see what will happen and what will be the output. Okay. So think about what will happen when we have a variable like this. So I'll just go ahead and write a piece of code so you can understand that. So you have a variable a is equal to 90, and on the top you're saying console.log a. What will be the output?
It will show error
syntax error.
Why?
because A is not been executed, but it is showing the
Okay.
first value, that is console.log.
Okay. So let's see whether you are right or wrong. And for that, what will we do? Every time you have a problem, our solution is going to be
Creating global execution, like we'll follow those 3 steps.
exactly, we will follow this. So we have a mental model. We know what to do. Okay. So in that way, it will be easier for us to understand what we are doing, or any problem if there is happening, we can just fix it. Just a second. Okay, so here, whenever you're having problem, the first thing we will always do now is to create a global execution context. So let's move faster now, okay? So somebody can just walk me through faster?
Yeah, like first we'll create a global execution context box. One part will be execution and another part will be memory.
Okay.
So now we'll go through declaration phase. So first is console.log is a function. So first there will be function declaration.
Okay, don't forget it. Don't forget about these things. Is like in declaration phase, what are the things we look for? Focus on this.
Variable declaration function.
Variable declaration, function declaration.
So is it a variable declaration or function declaration?
Function declaration.
Is it a function declaration?
It's function call.
It's
Function call.
function call. It's not a declaration. So we will not do
Yes.
anything in declaration mode. It's a
We
function
will
call.
skip it.
So we will just look at this value a. We will see this is a function. It is not a function declaration. So what we'll do?
We'll go to the next line.
We will go to the next line. So directly we will start from line number
2.
2. And in 2, what we are doing?
we'll create a box named with A and storing the value undefined.
Why?
Because var initialize the value with undefined, and it's
Good.
due to var.
So that is done. Which mode we are in right now?
Declaration phase. Now we'll switch to execution phase.
In execution phase, what do I am looking for? All the execution.
Yes, sir.
So execution, line number 1 is execution or not?
So it's
So line number 1 is not declaration. It means that it is not a variable declaration or function declaration. So this part is going to be execution. So in execution, I'm saying console.log A. So I'm saying console.log A. I'll try to look for the value of A here. And for that, where will I go?
The
the
memory.
memory
In the memory. What will I find there?
undefined.
Undefined. So what will I log?
Undefined.
Undefined.
So the log will be, and once that log is over, this line number 1 is done. I'll move on to line number 2. And this is where I will assign the value of 90 to A. But this already happened. The output is already there, right?
Yes.
And this is what is known as hoisting. Hoisting means even if the variable is defined at the bottom, the variable definition gets hoisted on the top. Even if it think about this code is written in this way, but actually this code is something like this. Can you imagine, like var a, then you have console.log a, and then you have a is equal to 90. So even if you write code like this, how it is interpreted? It is interpreted like this. Can you imagine that? Any problem with this? Like anybody who didn't understood what I said here? Okay, so what I'm trying to say is even if your code you have written is console.log a and var a equal to 90, actually it works something like this. You have var a and then you have console.log, then you have a is equal to 90 because that is how it works because of declaration and execution phase. So how is it, like understood or not?
Yes.
That's understood.
Understood.
Understood? Okay, so let's move to the next part and do it again one more time. Okay, so tell me, how will this code get interpreted? Elton, you walk me through. How will
First,
this code get interpreted? So similar to how we did it earlier, okay?
first
Okay,
it
go ahead.
creates a global execution context.
Go ahead. Keep going on. I'll just keep
Yeah,
doing it.
okay. And then it divides into two. One is execution and one is the memory.
Hmm.
And in memory, now it first looks for, first is the declaration phase.
Hmm.
In declaration phase, first it looks for variable and function declaration. So
Awesome.
now in the first line, it finds variable C. So it creates a box C.
Hmm.
It skips console.log because it's a function call.
So it will just create a box or initialize it with
Or
undefined?
it'll initialize with undefined
Awesome, no problem.
because variable defines it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll skip console.log because it's a function call and
Yeah.
and creates a box variable A, assigns
Hmm.
it to undefined,
Hmm.
and another box variable B undefined.
Awesome. Now, which phase we are in?
Now we are in execution phase.
Execution phase. What will happen here?
It will reassign variable C to 100.
Hmm.
Mm,
And it will console log A, B, and C.
yes.
So I'm A, B, and C. I'm looking for A. At going to the memory, I'll find 100.
Yes.
I'm looking for B. I'll go into memory. I'll find undefined.
Undefined.
I'm looking for C. I'll find undefined, and the output will be 100, undefined, and undefined. All good?
Yes.
So now, Alisa, you tell me what will be the how the code we have written is something like this, okay? How it will get interpreted, something like, you
Bhaiya, can
remember?
you
Yes, the question is the code we have written is something like this, but how it will get interpreted. So think about it like this. Earlier, the code we written like this, but it got interpreted like this. So this code, the down there code, will get interpreted in what way? So can you
it
see
will
here,
give
like
the value of
so here we are saying like var a
what
at the bottom, but it moved in the top. Can you see that? So look at this.
yes,
I'm
ma'am.
saying var a at the bottom, it is moving on the top. So that's all you have to do. Like, what do you think will happen here? So let's do it. Go ahead.
First var A will be created, then var B will be created, then var C with the value 100 and then console.log.
First line is what? Var a, b, c. What it is?
Var A.
It is var a. Where are you looking? So I'm talking about this part. This is line number 1.
Yes. Var C is equals to 100.
You're not listening properly, Alisa. Please and try to understand this part. So the first part is declaration, where you just say var c, nothing else. Second part, in execution, we say c is equal to 100. You remember what we did it here? We are saying, even if we are doing it at the bottom, we are saying var a here, and then we are saying console log, and after that we are saying a equal to 90. So this happen in declaration phase, this happen in execution phase. These are two different things. So don't worry, do it. Let's do it again. So var c will be there in
Yes,
declaration phase, and console log will be skipped or not in declaration.
will be skipped.
Okay, so it will move on to next one, and that is
Var A.
okay. Let's move on to that. Good job. Var a, or you can, to be very very precise, let's do it in this way, okay? Because there is something we are missing. Actually, it is happening. Var c is equal to
Undefined.
undefined, because initialization
Undefined.
is also happening, right? Undefined.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
then because you cannot use a variable without initialization, that is the rule we have to remember. Now line number 4.
Var B is equals to undefined.
Good. What will happen in execution phase?
C.
Now
Yes,
var
ma'am.
C.
We'll say c. We don't have to say var c. We'll just say c is equal to
100.
100, and we'll say console.log a comma b comma c, and next line is
A is equal to 64.
and
B is equal
B
to
is
90.
equal to
so can you see what happened? Look at, try to compare these two codes now, okay? Now this is our thing. So we just need to compare these two code. One code is here. So try to compare this and try to compare this part. Pink and yellow, try to compare them. What is happening here? So this is how we write. This is how we are writing the code. And this is how computer interpret, right? Or computer understands, you can say. And what you can see the difference between these two code? What are the things you can see difference? What difference will you do? Are you seeing it here in our pink and yellow code? Anyone, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
Bhaiya.
Okay, so what difference do you see between pink and yellow code? Anyone?
like in pink code it is written as like it is, and in yellow one it is first it is in declaration phase, then it goes into execution phase.
That is there, but what difference do you see in the code? That's all I'm asking. Like, what difference do you see this code here? You can see this is a code, right? So here we can see this is a code that we wrote, but this is how system understood it. So what is the difference between these two code? What is the difference you can
The
see?
difference is, Bhaiya, initially in the code what we have wrote, we have not defined A, B, C as undefined and all, but system took it as undefined and then executed it later on. But that one is missing in our code.
Yeah, so what is happening is all the variable declaration you can think about. So here, let's understand it like this. So all the variable declaration that we can think about. So here the variable declaration we can think about is this. Let me choose a different color. So variable declaration is this, and this. They all hoisted to top. Hoisted means moved to top. Can you see it here? They all got hoisted to top.
Yes.
And that is what is known as hoisting. So hoisting is a process where computer declares all the variable definition on the top, or moves the variable definition on the top. Even if it is at the bottom, it moves it on the top, and that is what hoisting is all about. How many of you are like 60% here? Like you understood what we are talking about. What is hoisting?
Yes, Bhaiya.
Yes,
Yes,
Bhaiya.
Bhaiya.
Yes,
Understood?
sir.
So you
Yes.
remember, because of hoisting, we were able to use the variable before defining it. Can you imagine that? Like here, the output was 100, undefined, and undefined. But if you look at this code, you will see that var A and var B is defined after this line of code. So we can use variable before defining it, but it will not contain the original value. It will contain the initialized value that is undefined. Understood?
Yes, Bhaiya.
Understood. Yeah.
Okay, so let's have a 2-minute discussion about it. Like, say, everybody who understood, just raise your hand. So it gives me confidence in terms of going on to next topic. Okay, I can see everybody is raising their hand. Okay, so how many of you didn't understood? Like Bharat, Kusal. Oh, Kusal is not here. So Puspendra, what about you? Any problem? You can ask me questions right now.
No, sir, I have no problem.
Okay, so Bharat, I think, I don't know. Sorry, I didn't see the
Bharat,
message. I'm just saying it now. The question is, functions are object. If I say var is equal to compile view is undefined, and if I define an arrow function with var keyword, how would JS compile? And this is really, really good question. And that is where we are going to right now, okay? So we'll go on to your question, Bharat, and we'll try to talk about that topic. But let's, everybody understood 100% properly, okay?
Yes, Bhaiya.
Okay. And this way, I think like the way we are doing it right now, I like it, because in this way, I don't get bored. Like, okay, it feels like I'm talking to walls. You guys are also like, we are also like talking to each other, like in that way, like I'm asking you a question, you're just replying it to me. And in this way, like, I think you also get engaged. Otherwise, I think like after 5 minutes, you'll start sleeping or something. Okay. So we learned about hoisting a bit. Okay. We learned about hoisting a bit. Now what we are going to do is to take it a bit further, okay? A bit further to understand why I was like very, very precise about just writing var everywhere. But in real life world code, have you ever seen me writing var a lot of time? No, you will not see that. But why I was like writing var, var, var everywhere? And that is where the problem is. So before that, let's go ahead and look at the practical use case, and then we'll come back to this code. So I'll just share my different screen where I'm writing code. Okay, so can you see my screen now, console?
Yes, Bhaiya.
Yes, Bhaiya.
So let's try to do the same thing. We are just going to say var a is equal to 100, or before that, I want to use this variable. So I'll say console.log. I'm just saying a. What should be the output? In console log, what should be the output?
Undefined.
Undefined.
Can you see undefined here? This is console log and this is return. Everybody understand the difference between return and console log? So return will have this arrow pointing outside. Undefined will not have that. So we can see that undefined is coming from this console and the value of a is undefined. And this is happening because of which reason? That is known as hoisting.
Hoisting.
The
Hoisting.
variable definition get hoisted on the top. And that is what we have been seeing. Let's try to do the same thing, but here we are going to say let. How many of you think something will change here? I'm just going to refresh it because it doesn't contain other things. So I'm just going to refresh it and say, and here it is saying reference error A is not defined. But why is it happening in that way? Obviously, there must be some difference, right?
Yes, Bhaiya.
Because of var and let.
I think so. In let, we can't initialize the value.
Because in var, once var is already undefined, and once var is defined, it cannot be changed, like in global. But let is only for that particular time.
Okay, let's see what happens. So I don't think that you guys need a lot of sessions from me. I think Sonu can take that from next time. Okay, Sonu. So tomorrow I'll not be here. Can you just fill in for me?
No way, I don't think so I can do that.
Okay. No, I am very sure you can do that. Okay. So we have seen something here, and let's just see what. So let's just see the use case of it, like where we are doing something like that. So I've given you the like how it is working, and now I'll just show you like what we are going to do about that. Okay. So we are just going to say console.log, and here I'm saying a, and we are saying let a is equal to 45. See, the problem is we haven't looked at the problem properly right now. I'll give you the exact example of what should happen. Okay. So here, I'm just going to give you an example like this. We have a console log and we are using a variable a, and here we are saying a is equal to 45. So the first thing that is going to happen, somebody can walk me through what is going to happen? Come on, faster.
A global execution contact will be created. One part will be execution, second will be memory.
Huh? Which mode?
Then there will be declaration phase. So we'll skip line number 1 because it's a function call.
It
So
will
we'll
create
go
a
to the
box
second.
A. Good.
A. And
So
I don't
this
think so
is
here will
where
be.
like let. Okay, so I'll just stop you so we can just talk about let a bit. Okay. So let's talk about what is let doing here. Okay. So let is first thing let does is it creates a box that we have seen it in other places also. So box creation happens. Second is it doesn't initializes the box. So it doesn't initializes the box at all. And what is the rule for using a box? Anyone?
Use
You
box
cannot
without
use.
initialization.
Can't use without initialization. No, but it only happens in var.
No, it happens everywhere. It's a general rule. You cannot use a box without initialization.
Initialization.
All good? So what will happen? The box in declaration mode will not get initialized to any variable or value. It is uninitialized right now. I cannot use this box. So I'm throwing this, I'm saying console.log A in execution mode. I'm saying A. I'll go inside. Can I use this box A or
No,
not?
bhaiya.
No, sir.
No.
But the error was saying something like A is not defined, right? A is
Yeah.
defined, but A is not initialized. It's hard to understand what error it is throwing, right? So let's go and try to see what is happening at different places. Okay, so here what I'll do is like I'll just try to show you what happens when we actually write a real world code. So just give me a second. I'll just prepare my VS Code and then I can just show you what is happening there.
Hello, bhaiya.
Yeah.
Can you just repeat it, bhaiya, because I was not able to hear the network.
No, I was saying like the error should be like what error we got in the browser when we were trying to access A before initialization.
That is saying A is not defined.
It was saying A is not defined, but here the message should be you cannot use a variable without initialization, right?
Yeah.
If we understand it properly. So let's just see what is wrong with this approach. So I'm just creating a folder and I'm just showing it to you, writing a code. Okay, so just give me a second. So here I'm just going to say this, like I'm just going to write basic HTML and just directly link it. Everybody can see my page, right? Code here.
Yes, bhaiya.
Okay, so here
Yes,
I'll
bhaiya. We
say
can see.
console.log and what we want to do, we want to console log A, and here I'm just going to say let A is equal to 21. And what should be doing? Let's just open this. So you can see both the windows like code and the output Chrome also.
No,
No,
bhaiya.
only VS
Only just
Code
the
is
code.
visible.
You can only see code. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Now you can see it.
Yes, bhaiya.
So you can see
But
the
it's just
code
the
also,
console. Yeah.
and you can also see this.
Can't
in
see the
cons
VS Code, just the console part we are able to see, browser part.
okay, so in browser you can see that what error it is throwing. We wrote the
Cannot
same
access
code,
it.
right? We wrote the same code that we wrote exact same code here. Can you see that? Like in JavaScript, we have seen a is equal to console log a and let a is equal to this. And now if we go on to this one, to our, can't we say multiple screen here? Anybody who knows how to say a multiple screen?
Actually, there's an option where you can share your entire screen.
So it's not showing me, like I can just do that. Like that's a lot more easier for me.
Like during the demo session, like I saw everyone's able to do that. Just share the entire screen
Okay,
with
so
code and
desktop one it is showing. So just saying desktop one, that is the thing.
maybe it doesn't have a feature to show multiple desktops, I think.
Okay, so you can see multiple screen from me now.
Yeah, now
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, sorry. It was saying desktop once, I was confused there. Okay, no problem. So here you can see that we wrote the same code here, and in our console.log, we can see that it's like the same thing. Like, okay, let's just put it here only, so it will be easier for us to understand. So here you can see both the screens now, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so here what is happening is I'm writing this piece of code, and here it is throwing an error, cannot access A before initialization. But if you write it the same thing here, I'll just go ahead and write it here, paste it and enter. It said A is not defined. What is happening? Anybody who can explain me this? So the reason it is doing in that way is because when you write this code, browser tries to understand it and throws a perfect error for it. But what you should know is your console is not exact replica of how your browser should behave, okay? It's not exact, your console is not exact replica of what JavaScript does at what point of time. It's not a replica, okay? It is very close to that, but most of the time it is trying to be more friendly. So the problem that used to happen earlier is when you define, say there is another problem also. When I go ahead and say let a is equal to 21, so let's just try to understand this part. I'm saying var b is equal to 21, and here I'm saying var b is equal to 31. So what I'm actually doing with this two line of code, I'm creating a box named v and initializing that with a value of 21. I'm creating again another box with b, but there was already a box named b, right? But there is no error when you're using var. But when you do the same thing with let, I'll say let, and here I'll just call it c. And let's see what error we get here. So I'll go ahead and comment out the older one. So here, let's just comment out this code. And here we can see identifier C has already been declared. It means that you cannot define or create the same box with same name multiple times when you're using let. If we remove this, everything is perfectly fine. You can do that with var, but you cannot do it with let. So using let, you can only create one box at once, only one time, not multiple times. You cannot do, okay, I am creating a box named C and I'm also creating a box named C when you're using let. You cannot do that. And when you rephrase it here, you don't see any error. But as soon as you say something like let, it throws an error like this. Let's go ahead and try doing it in browser also. Okay. So I'll go ahead and say let C is equal to 21. That is perfectly fine. What if I do C is equal to 40 again? It is not throwing any error. The reason it doesn't throw any error is because when you are using console to test your code, it becomes really like means it becomes like really bad. It's a bad experience that how many times you define the same variable multiple times when you're just testing your code in console. How many times you do that? I'm just asking a question is like how many times you just go ahead and copy paste the same code and you say let a is equal to 21 and you again say let a is equal to 31. So the problem that happens is in console it should throw an error, and earlier it used to throw an error. If you look at older code, older browsers, you will see this will throw an error. It doesn't throw it is because browser wants to be friendly to you. It is like, okay, I don't want to like bug them every time they're trying to define the same variable. So console is not exact replica of browser, means how JavaScript engine works. It's very, very close, but a lot of places browser wants to be very, very helpful for you guys. So that's why it is not throwing an error. And that is the reason when you say something like this, here, you refresh it, it will, this is the right message to understand. It says that cannot access A before initialization. So this can answer our question, right? We understand why this error is coming.
Yes, Bhaiya.
Yes, Bhaiya.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, so it is nothing new. Like it's just that I just wanted to share it with you guys in terms to understand the difference between console and JavaScript engine. They are not exactly same. They're very, very close, but they're not exactly same. Okay.
Yes, Bhaiya.
Okay. So we learned about last thing, and that is let and const. Let and const is not exactly like var. What let and const does is let and const does two things, or maybe you can think of it to be doing only one thing. Creates a box, that's all. It doesn't do the next thing, that is initializing the box with a value. And because of that reason, you cannot use and the rule says that you cannot use a box without
Initial position.
initialization. And that's why it throws an error saying you cannot use A without initialization. Understood?
Yes, Bhaiya.
Let's move
Yes,
to the
Bhaiya.
last topic and we'll wrap it up by understanding difference between two things. So last code, let's focus properly and just be here for next 15 minutes and we are done. So we are saying var A is equal to 100. We are saying let B is equal to 200. We are saying let C is equal to 300. And here we are saying console dot log A, B, and C. This is one code. And later on, the code we will be doing is, let's say, let add is equal to function that accepts A and B and returns A plus B. We'll say function subtract accepts A and B and returns A minus B. And here we are saying let 5 is equal to add 4 and 1. And we have let 3 is equal to sub 6 and 3. Okay, so we have two pieces of code. Let's start from the first one. So anybody who can walk me through what is going to happen here on this part? Okay, so who will do that? Alisa, go ahead.
Bhaiya, first our box will be, no, first the global execution process will happen.
Awesome.
One part will be execution and the other part will be memory.
Awesome. Good job. Move forward.
Okay, then a
Which
box will,
phase we are in?
we are in declaration phase.
Awesome. Line number 1, 2,
We
3, 4.
will
So line number 1 is declaration or not?
Not
Good. It is line
a
number
function.
2.
Line number 2, a box will be created.
Awesome. And the name of the box is?
A.
And it will be initialized or not?
Yeah, it will be initialized with undefined.
Awesome. Good job. Line number 3.
A box will be created.
Name.
Name B, but it will not be initialized.
Good job. And again, it will be the same thing. Box C, it will not be initialized and it will throw an error. What error it will throw?
It will throw an error that
You cannot use B without initialization. Because A is undefined, but B is not initialized and you cannot use it. And that's why it will throw an error. Good job, Alicia. Awesome. So Visakha, can you walk me through what will happen to this piece of code?
Yes.
Just this one, okay? If you're having confusion, just this part. We forget about the other one. And here I'll just make it like this so you understand. This one.
First, global execution context will be created.
Awesome.
With memory and execution part.
Good job.
Then a box with
which phase we are
in the declaration phase.
Good
a
job.
box with 5 will be created with name 5.
Will it be initialized?
No,
okay,
because
good.
we are using let. Then a box with 3 with the name 3 will be created without initialization. Then again a box with add with the name add will be created again without initialization.
Then you have a function. What will
So,
happen with sub? Don't worry, let's go back. What function does? Look at this.
So function, it creates a box and initializes it with function declaration. Function
means the
body.
whole function, right?
Yeah, yeah. So a box of function will be with name sub will be created.
Sub and it is a function. It knows that.
Yeah, function body.
Okay.
So,
now.
And it will then in the execution.
Okay, I think like you have done a good job, really good job, Visakha. Now let's go to the next person. Elton, can you just walk me through what will happen next in execution phase? Good job, Visakha.
Thank you.
Moving to execution phase, Elton, walk me through what will happen now.
So add.
So
it'll go to the third, that is function return a plus. Okay, so it reassigns the function, the third line number 3. It goes to
what
the
will
line
happen to line number 1?
Line number 1, it has to call the add function.
Yeah, and what happens when you call a function? Anyone?
Create function context.
It creates a.
Yeah, it creates.
This is global execution context.
Yeah.
This is function execution context.
Yeah.
No problem. So this is function execution context.
Yeah.
So function execution context of what? Add. Okay. Now, when you call add, what is add? Can you see there? You go into your memory. You're like, okay, I want to add. You go into your memory. What do you find from add?
Add, but
there is nothing in it.
It's undefined. It's not undefined.
It will throw an error, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So the execution will stop there itself. But let's pretend it didn't stop. Okay. So we can just focus on the next part. Let's pretend it doesn't exist anymore for us. Okay. So I'm just saying, forget about this line of code. Move to line number 2 now. What will happen? So this line is I'm done with. I'm just deleting this. Move to line number 2. What will happen to line number 2? Yeah, go ahead, Elton. What will happen to line number 2?
Say, the same thing as the line number 1 happened.
Yeah, no, but here
Because
which
it's on the
function we are
left.
calling? Which function we are calling?
The line number 6 function.
Okay, so let's not be in a hurry and
Yeah.
think about, I'm looking for sub execution context, right? So I will go into the memory. Will I find anything related to sub?
Yes.
Yes.
And
A
what is
function.
sub here? Can you see what is sub here?
A function.
It knows that it is a
Yeah.
function. Earlier, it didn't know that it is a function or not in the case of add. Okay, I'll just change the colors
Yes.
so we understand the difference there. So here it knows it is it's a function, but in our previous case, it didn't know it is a function. Can you see that? And so
Yes.
that's why it was throwing an error. But will this throw an error? No, it will not throw an error. It will go ahead and call the function with 6 and 3. It will go into declaration mode. So all the thing will happen. It will go into declaration mode. It will create two boxes, and two boxes are, what are the two boxes?
A and B.
A and B. What are the, so declaration mode is over, go into execution mode, and we have two values. What is that? 6 and 3 we are sending, right?
Yes.
It will not be initialized. Now it will be initialized. And now you're saying in sub function that you return 6 minus 3. And what will get returned from here?
3.
3. And so that 3 will be stored in which variable?
Sub.
3.
Yeah.
And so difference that you need to understand here. Now after doing this, let's try to understand the difference. This is function execution or function. So this is function declaration or function expression. Green one.
Declaration.
Function declaration.
It's a function declaration. And how about this one?
Function execution.
It's a function expression, not execution.
Expression, sorry, yeah.
It's
Sorry.
expression. Why it is an expression is because it is being stored into a variable called add. And tell me which one gets hoisted, function declaration or function expression?
Declaration.
Only declaration gets hoisted because expression doesn't get hoisted. Not because of that, because whenever you have a variable in declaration mode, it only cares about one thing, that is let add. It doesn't go to the right hand side of it. Understood?
Yeah.
So why, so now you have one more reason to understand about why you should be writing function declaration all the time. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
bro.
so you should be writing function declaration because it gets hoisted. So whenever you have function expression, it doesn't get hoisted. So Bharat, I think it answered your questions. Yeah,
Yes,
so the difference is whenever you have a function declaration, a function expression like this. What is a function expression? Function expression is when you store a function inside a variable. Can you see that variable? How does variable behave? So variable, first just say for example, even if you're using let, instead of let you're saying var, what it will say, it will create a box and the name of that box will be add and it will be initialized with undefined. And if you're trying to use that function before defining it, function expression will not work, but function declaration gets hoisted is because if you remember what we talked about function, the function keyword creates the box that we can see it here. It creates the box and stores the body at the same time. It doesn't wait for execution phase to store the information. So I think we need to understand this part properly. So after doing that, let's just see how different it is. So when you say var a is equal to 45, and when you say function add, the difference is in declaration mode, I will create a box, right? The box name will be A and the value will be undefined. So in declaration mode, I don't know what is the value. Only in execution mode I know the value. But think about what happens in declaration mode for the function. In declaration mode, you define the function. Along with that, you also know it is a function. And you store the body itself in declaration mode only. That is the difference between variable and function declaration. So here you don't know what is the value on the right hand side in declaration mode. Here you know that it is a function and you store the whole information of the function. That is the difference between variable declaration, that we can see it here, and a function declaration. And now once we understand difference between variable declaration and function declaration, let's move back. So here we are saying add. We are using this add function. So here we are saying add. We are using this add function here. And we are using add function before defining it. So this code will look something like this. So whatever will get hoisted is all the variable definition will get hoisted. So it will be let 5, it is not initialized, let 3, it is not initialized, let add, it is not initialized. But here, function sub will be initialized with the body of it. And that's why here we saw, in this case, we saw that 5 is, there is nothing in 5. And at that point of time where there was nothing in 3 also. So there is nothing in 5, there is nothing in 3. I don't know about add because it only in execution phase I will get to know it is a function. But in declaration mode only I know sub is a function. And that's why first line, when we went into this line, we saw we are trying to call add function, and add was nothing. If you look at this part, there was nothing in add. So what can I call? You can only call a function, and you're not able to call this because it is there is no value in it. So it will throw an error. You cannot use a variable without initialization. But when you do the same thing with sub, what happens is for sub, you go on looking for what is sub. And you're like, okay, sub is a function. I know that. But here I didn't know sub add is a function or not. And that was the main difference between expression and declaration. Was it helpful or should I do it again? Everyone?
Yes, we understood.
Yes, I got it.
Got it?
Yeah,
So, so everybody who got it, just re-raise your hand. And should we use one over other? Yeah, the reason I'm saying is like normally whenever similar to var, let and const, what we do is we start with const, we go on to let, and then we go on to var. Similarly, what I normally do in function is like no matter where I write, I always start with function declaration. The reason for that is because you think about function declaration, there are a lot of merits for this function. First is this function has a name. This function gets hoisted. So even if in future, you should not be generally doing that using function before defining it, but sometimes it happens. Sometimes you need that. Sometimes you will need that to happen. But if it is not function declaration, then it will not get hoisted and will not be able to use it. So that's why whenever you want to use your function before defining it, always use function declaration, not function expression, because function expression doesn't get hoisted. Hope that was helpful. Other reasons are like function declaration has a name and it is much easier to read. But here it is like define a variable inside that holds some value, so that is a function. So you can do that, but it's not necessarily we have to do it. Always prefer writing function declaration over function expression whenever you can. Not all the time, but most of the time. Exactly. That is the way to think about it. Like go with function declaration all the time, and things like map, reduce or something where you need an anonymous function or something, go for function expression. Otherwise, I don't like using function expression mostly other than like sending it as a callback to other function. When you're sending it as a callback to other function, then it's a different story. But other than that, I don't find a huge use case for that. You have already seen the difference here. Like, see, like what if I have just changed this function into a function declaration? This whole code was working, but this is not working right now. If you want to see the use case right here, let's just go and look at the code. Okay. So we'll go ahead and write that code similar to that, and we'll say let 5 is equal to, we are going to call this function add. Add, we are going to say 2 and 3. We haven't defined the function. I'm just going to define that function by saying, okay, I'm just going to say this function to be like this. It is going to accept two value, a comma b, and I'm going to return a plus b, right? So this is my function, this is my expression. I'll go ahead and comment it out and say function expression. Similarly, I have another one that is function declaration. This one is not going to be a function expression, and it will be called sub. Sub takes two value and returns a minus b. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to say 6, and we'll say 9 minus 3, and we'll call the function sub. Now, if you do that, what is happening is actually this code, when interpreted by the compiler, it looks actually like this. In declaration mode, it will not be initialized, so it will be removed. It will not be initialized, it will be removed. It will not be initialized, so it will be removed. Now, function declaration will be hoisted, and now it will look something like this. I'll copy this again, and here paste it. I don't need to define anything, so I'm just going to remove this, and you don't need this. So you wrote your code like this, but it actually got interpreted like this, and this part where all your declaration like this moved on the top, even if you're moving it like this, okay, say I just move it to the bottom. So this is a difference. Just going to put it. So this is what you write, and this is how system understand it. So can you understand this part? So here what is happening is, in declaration mode, I'm looking for declaration. So this will go on top, this will go on top, this will go on top, and this will go on top. So we can, that's why we can see let 5, let 6, let add, and function. So this is what happens in declaration mode, and this is what happens in execution mode. So in declaration mode, all the things that you were doing got hoisted on the top, and in execution mode, first thing you're doing, okay, call add. But you're like, add, I don't know what it is, because add doesn't have any value right now when I'm calling it. It only gets a value whenever you run this part of the code. And that is the difference. Let's go ahead, comment it out, and look at the output. Here you'll see cannot access add before initialization. And that is what we are trying to do. Look at this code and try to understand that. Here I am calling add. And what add is what? Add is nothing. Means it is not even initialized. And that's why it throws an error, says cannot access add before initialization. But if we convert this, say I just comment out this code and convert this add function into a declaration, what happens? Let's go ahead and console log so we know the difference. Console.log, and we'll say 5, 6. Refresh it here, and we can see 5 and 6. As soon as we change it to function declaration, we'll say let add is equal to this function expression, it throws an error. Can you see the difference what is happening? So as soon as it's a function declaration, the whole code will change like this. So we are saying let 5, let 6, and here we are saying let add. We are not doing that now. What we are doing, we'll just copy this code and we'll say function add that accepts two value, a comma b, and returns a plus b. So instead of being like this, This is how it looks, and that's why both the code is working whenever it is function declaration, and it doesn't work whenever it is function expression. So this is the final call for everybody. Tell me if you understood everything about it. The last topic, hoisting. Hoisting and
Yes,
difference
Bhavin.
between var, let, and const and function. All good from everyone?
Yeah, understood.
Yes.
But if we plan to use function expression, so
Yeah.
is it better to use it with the combination of var then? Is it like that?
No, 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 no. So think about what will happen with, what will change with var. Nothing will change with var. Like if we just change it, let's go ahead and do that. And here we are just saying var add. The only thing that will change is here
Yes,
we are
yes,
saying
right.
add will say var add is equal to undefined. That's all that will change. Will you be able to call undefined?
No,
Think
no.
about
In
it.
the end, it'll be undefined.
So it will throw an error. You cannot. So let's see what will be the error. So can you imagine what will be the error here? You are trying to call undefined here, right?
Yes.
So it will throw you cannot call undefined. That should be the error. So
Yes.
it's saying add is not a
Add is
function.
not a
That is
function.
exactly what it is.
Okay.
So it doesn't change a fact about function declaration. It doesn't change a fact about expression at all. It's just that you should be able to understand the way you look at code. You should be able to understand how browser is or how JavaScript engine is going to interpret the code. So this is the interpretation, like how they are going to understand this code. And today I will give you at least 10 code snippet. And what you have to do, you have to come up with how interpretation is going to happen, how they are going to interpret it. Along with that, I will give you 10 other code snippet. You have to create execution context. And let me tell you one thing, okay? This is the best way of thinking about how, and say, you must have learned about this concept earlier also. I don't know, but there are a lot of people who must have heard about concepts like hoisting and stuff like that. It doesn't make sense to me until I understand this part of like, okay, there is something known as declaration mode, there is something known as execution mode, and because declaration mode exists is the reason we are able to see a thing known as hoisting. If there was no declaration mode, there would not be a thing known as hoisting. Okay, so everybody, all you have to do today is like, I'll give you 20 code snippet in like next 20 or 30 minutes. You have to first you have to create the image. So I'll give you 10 code snippet. You will have to first create execution context for that in your notebook. And then you have to create a code snippet like this, how browser or how engine is going to understand it. Any problem with that?
No, bhaiya.
No, sir.
All good?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Bhavin.
Okay. Why it is yes? Why it is not like yes?
Awesome.
Okay, it is awesome. So, I think awesome solves 90% of the problem in the world. Mm. Okay, guys. So let's go back and I'll